introduction. So the fact that you're in here at the end of the day with us to hear us talk about community activism and community organizing in support of the development of XR is really great, and we're grateful. And we're used to holding parties where no one comes, and also holding parties where, where there's almost too much going on. So we are here to talk with you about our experiences creating spaces for people to come IRL and learn and collaborate and support each other. But just really quickly, I know we don't have time. Any meetup organizers here in the room with us? Okay, Suzanne and Jonah here. Okay, so our goal with our discussion today was to convey some tips and tricks for other organizers, but also to convey some lessons learned for people who want to get the most out of attending meetups. And now there's, thousands, there's so many meetups going on, not just in the R space, in the XR space, of course, but in any topic you want. But let me first introduce my colleagues, who for many don't need introduction, but I will do so. They're my friends. They've taught me a lot, and I am so amazed by the way they've put their hearts and minds into creating community and allowing the creation of collaborations that wouldn't have happened unless they had put their effort into it. So on my far left here is Emily Olson, who many know from the city. Emily is the co-president, along with Mike Boland, of the San Francisco chapter of what many can't pronounce, the VRARA, yeah, the VRAR Association, the International Association. And Emily's been doing that for a couple of years now, and we'll talk about that. And then Karl Krantz, many of you know as the founder and organizer of one of the world's most successful and longest-lasting meetups, SVVR, Silicon Valley VR, which runs monthly meetups down here in the area, and has a community of over 5,000 VR professionals, 6,000 now, and you just celebrated your 5-year anniversary. You guys started just recently, a couple of years, and already you've got almost 100 members, all professionals, and that represents almost a good 10% of overall VRARA. Global. Yeah. So that's pretty significant. And I co-founded the Bay Area's first meetup back a long time ago, in the 90s. We didn't call them meetups then. Meetup thing didn't exist. They were called user groups. And user groups started in the early days of mainframe computers as a way to share knowledge and sometimes software, because software then was usually written by users and not by the hardware companies. And user groups proliferated during the microcomputer era in the late 70s and the early 80s as hobbyists got together to help each other with programming and configuration and applications. So when I started to get interested in virtual reality, I was struck by the fact that it was for the techno-elite. There weren't really ways for regular people to have access to the tools in order to understand how to apply them. So along with two other great people, we formed the Virtual Reality Users Group, VRUG, and called it Verge. And our first meeting was advertised on the Well, which was a dial-up bulletin board system, and just said, if you're interested in virtual reality, meet us south of Market in some multimedia studio. And I bought a case of Calistoga, 24 bottles, and about 80 people showed up. It was just great, and then we grew, and eventually the Exploratorium hosted us for about 5 years, every month. So I now kind of casually run the East Bay VR meetup. So I thought that this effort of bringing community together really evokes the whole set of values that Tom Furness and the Virtual World Society is pushing forward, of putting your heart and your efforts into building something for people to enjoy and build more. So I want to hand it over to you. I want to start out with that hearts and mind thing and ask you each to tell folks kind of about the roots of your meetup group in terms of it being a volunteer effort, how you had, how do you gather the resources to make it run and to make it successful? I imagine you both started out as volunteers doing it for love. Mm-hmm. Karl, you want to start first since you have been in here in SVVR a while?
Yeah, sure. First, also, I just want to say thanks for having me, and it's a great honor to be here. And actually, none of what I do would probably be along the same path if I didn't get a book when I was in high school, the Garage VR book. Wow. So actually, getting to meet Linda later in life was really meaningful for me, because that book was like the first kind of VR is not just for the enterprises and the government institutions that could afford it, but this is actually a technology that can be spread to people. Yeah, SVVR, when we first started SVVR, it was entirely volunteer. It was like a part-time thing. I had this idea that this would be something I could do and also do a startup in the VR space at the same time, and it was really about just getting access to technology. And then that was like my first goal on it, was I wanted to try things, and I didn't have a lot of these things, and I thought, but from the very first meetup, it became apparent that the real magic was all the other people that were passionate about this. Those were my people. Like, right. I found, like, this is my family. Mm-hmm. I finally found my people. Mm-hmm. And yeah, for the first year, it was run entirely like kind of part-time here and there. After about a year into it, we decided we're also going to do a VR conference and start doing more. And then at that point, it became a full-time job. And now it's a full-time job for multiple people.
What's your main source of revenue at this point, then, to keep it going? How do you drive this engine?
So we've been evolving over the years, so that's changed. We've chased after sponsorship and tried to tie that to the conference and other things over the years. But we have doubled down on community. We restructured our organization, so we're now a public benefit corporation. Fantastic. We've opened up a Patreon, so if you love SVR, go to Patreon, look for SVVR. And we also do also have a membership model, so we have various levels. So we have startups who are members, professionals who are members. We have a space in Mountain View that has it's a demo center, event space, co-working, a lot of things that we can offer our members. So the members are supporting it. And then we do engage with partners and sponsors on various projects. So we have partners on our Multiverse initiative, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay, that's remarkable. In Emily's case, it's really interesting because the VRARA has been created as a professional money-making organization, yet Emily and Mike run it here in the Bay Area as a very grassroots operation where you really focus on community and education and not about driving necessarily revenues through whatever, sponsorship or other activities. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to create the San Francisco chapter and what drives your organizing principles?
Absolutely. So Linda's right. The VRARA Association is a large global organization. They are an LLC, and so they chose a business structure that's a little bit different, of course, than a nonprofit organization. So from the global perspective, of course, it is a for-profit entity that is serving professionals in the VR and AR industries. And then we have all these chapters. And so I actually came onto the scene when Mike Boland was running the San Francisco chapter by himself and was the chapter president, and he was still working at BIA Kelsey. And we are doing this, all of the chapter presidents are doing it as a part-time sort of side gig or additional thing to their day job. And so Mike and I both knew that, and I was sort of recruited because I had been actively going to meetups and also to AWE. I went to, in 2016, I went to all 3 AWEs, so in China, here in Santa Clara, and also in Germany. So I had sort of hit the ground running when I first got into the scene at EBVR, which Linda runs in the East Bay. And so it was the same thing as with Karl. Like, I really found my community, and I was super inspired to become involved. And I thought, you know, the thing that's nice about the way that the VRARA Association works is that we do collect member dues, and then the chapters get a portion of that revenue, and then from that revenue, of course, Global has its own entity, but Mike and I, in running the San Francisco chapter, we sort of have a fiduciary responsibility to redistribute that revenue. And of course, we earn revenue from the meetups and from Eventbrite and ticket sales. And all of our events are free to members, but then we charge everybody else who comes to the events. And so it is grassroots because, you know, there is a really established ecosystem of meetups in the Bay Area, and it's almost like there's a meetup every day, or multiple meetups every day. You know, I know Joe's in the audience. He runs like a spreadsheet for, you know, all of the different meetups to try and, you know, capture it all in one place. And so, yeah, so we wanted to do something different that had a lot of value and was really about trying to, you know, capture whatever the topic of the moment was and be flexible. And so, you know, I would say that we are trying to grow the chapter, and it's always healthy and better to have revenues, but it's very much like people driven and about the interests of our members and about kind of where we think that the industry is, what it needs at that moment, sort of dictates what we do.
It's almost like, you know, DJing some kind of big party, right?
Yeah.
You have to ramp up the beats and know when to drop the bass. And,
Yeah.
and you know how to resolve people. And if there's a drunk, you got to get them out of the room. So talk a little bit about that. Not the drunks, but about the, I don't mean to offend anybody. But when you're doing these events, you have to meet the needs of a lot of different agendas. So I'm curious, I bet others are here too, about any incidents you could remember and relate to us when there was a conflict of interest in, not necessarily in a financial way, but in terms of someone wanting something that you weren't able to meet. What went wrong and how did you fix it? And Emily, why don't you go first?
Oh, well, I think that the thing that happens to us more often is that there's this, you know, we have we'll have a VIP event, and so it's more like this velvet rope syndrome. Like, the minute you put up a velvet rope, then everybody wants to be on the other side of the rope. And so we'll have not conflicts with our members and not conflicts with the venues, although we've certainly had a few of those. But it's more that, you know, we have to manage people's expectations about being able to participate in what we're doing, because we provide this service for our members. And so we have a lot of either non-members or entourage that would like to be a part of what we're doing. And so we delicately have to manage that. And in particular, like when we have, you know, I guess VIPs or celebrity folks in our industry, you know, that can be a little delicate. So.
You're right. I won't name names, but you had a dinner and you invited one celebrity person who brought
entourage,
a whole group of people to the dinner that weren't planned for.
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, we had to stick to our plan. So we basically, you know, we accommodated as best we could, and you know, had to be firm with people. But then we were able to let them in at the end, and it was great because I actually had to be really firm with somebody, and then it ended up that, you know, I'm still in touch with that person. Like, they just had eventually just respect for the fact that I had to be like, no, you can't come in. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. We don't have a seat for you, you know. So. You know, but I think being a host or a hostess, you know, you have to do it graciously. That's kind of the way to manage people, and it's nothing personal.
Karl?
One, I like your DJ analogy because I for many years was a DJ, so you may be onto something there. I don't know. It is very similar, actually. I think about that a lot. So getting a venue for doing these events is always a challenge, and there are plenty of companies that will offer up their space and say, hey, we'd love to have you come do a meetup at our space. Companies in the VR industry, they want the people there. They want, hiring pool, and there's all these reasons that they want. Some of them just want to contribute. One example in particular that happened to us, I won't name the actual companies, but one of the major companies in the VR industry was allowing us to do meetups in their space. So we were doing meetups month after month there. It was working out really great. And one day we were, just about to open up an event, and a couple hundred people there lining up, and one of their kind of corporate PR people comes down and was like, we just want to make sure that there are no headsets from blank manufacturer going to be shown here, a competing company. And that is very, very opposite and very counter to everything that we do and we stand for. We have an open demo policy. We devote more than half of our meetups are just open demo time. So anyone can bring in anything they want. They don't have to, we don't vet it ahead of time. We just want to see like diversity and all sorts of approaches. So we had to fight back and push and say, listen, you don't understand our community. People are bringing in the headsets that they use, that they own, that they have access to, Also, it didn't help that this company actually had not a great device and not the top one. So it's like you're saying we can't use the best VR devices here at a meetup here. So long story short, we never did an event with them again. We said, this is just not something that we can do as a community-driven organization. But you do have to be firm with, especially when big companies are sponsoring, the way their PR teams work. The mindset is so different than the community mindset.
Yeah, there's definitely a community mindset, there's group think that comes up that you have to manage, I remember once at a Verge meeting. Now, you have to understand when I was running Verge, this was not really commercial, right? There was not much money in the field. It was hard to find money. People were in it because they were weird. We were all outliers and geeks and hippies and neo-nerds and also, pretty liberal and progressive. So when my co-founder got up, and at the beginning of every meeting, we would make announcements. What's going on? I have a new whatever to share with people. Come see my art piece. And one of our co-founders got up and announced that his company, very proudly, had just received a DARPA contract. And that they were going to be able to stay alive another month, creating these large-scale immersive visualization systems for battlefield visualization and situational awareness. And so, oh my God, the audience, they started booing him and balling up paper and throwing it at him. And, it was just bad behavior. So, what do you do in a case like that? I turned out the lights. I turned out the lights in the room,
right.
and everybody's like, then made everybody turn to their neighbor and introduce themselves. Just
so
like get out of that anti-whatever head. But you got to manage crowd behavior. What is a takeaway or two that you have to share for both organizers as well as meetup attendees for getting the most out of the experience, either as a presenter or as a participant?
Well, I think that for the organizers, we try to set things in advance, the schedules in advance, so that people have an expectation of sort of regularity. We don't have a monthly meetup. We just don't have that kind of bandwidth right now for the San Francisco chapter. But we stay in communications with the members. We try to tell them when things are happening, then also communicating with other people who have either come to our events before. It's just great to try to give people a little bit of time to plan to come to your events. And but even if we do that, one of the things that's so hard as an organizer is that you can put up the Eventbrite like 2 months in advance, and then you get all of your signups the day before. And until then, you're like, it could be 10 people or it could be 150 people. I don't really know what to order. I don't know what to do. And so, I think juggling that. And so the more meetups you have, the better track you will be able to keep of like projections. And that goes for revenue, that goes for attendees, that goes for like drop-offs, same day, and just cancellations. Like we also had a situation last year, which, tonight is of course another Warriors game. And last summer, we had this event that just we kept having a hard time finding a date for it. And then we finally scheduled the date. It was our big Light Fields, Road to the Holodeck event. We were so excited. We had Lytro, we had Visby, we had all these people. And then, the Warriors won the championship. And so we had the venue was actually barricaded off and blocked, and because there was going to be a parade down Broadway in Oakland the next day. And so, and I had like a truck, Exit Reality was bringing in their truck, which they have this, this mobile VR giant truck, like taco truck that's all tricked out, but it's mobile VR. And I was like, well, what do I do? And I remember calling Linda and being like, should I have this event still? Like, people might not be able to get in, get out. I don't know what to do. So we rescheduled it. It took a couple more months to find a date. But there's just, with all of your best planning, you still can't anticipate and what's going to happen. So, yeah.
So be prepared. So, in other words, be prepared for surprises.
Be prepared for surprises. Yeah, and then Warriors finals, those kinds of things. Yeah, just avoid.
All right. Go Dubs. And Karl?
Okay, so a couple tips or thoughts for organizers. One is free events are great, and we tried to do free events. And when we first started, we did free events for at least the first year. Everything we did was free. We figured, okay, you're not going to make enough money on doing meetups to live off of or build an organization on. So this is community oriented. Let's just make it free, and that'll be great. And that was really cool. But there are problems with free. You get a ton of no-shows. People are not that invested. And then we started charging. We just said, okay, let's just start charging enough to cover the venue and a little bit towards the equipment we're buying and food and this kind of thing. When we started charging for the events, the quality of the event went way up. Even just a little bit. We started charging $5. Once, first of all, our no-shows went from 50% to 10%. So that's a huge difference. And those people actually contributed even if they didn't show, so they're still contributing. So charging a little bit, even if it's not a lot, and I certainly don't encourage to charge a ton for an event, but a little bit, it really helps raise the quality. The people that are there are more invested. You get less people that are like, I don't really care about VR, but I'm going to go to the VR meetup because it's free and there's probably food there for free. But you get people that actually care about it are the people that show up. So that's been really helpful for us, is to not be afraid to charge, because I was afraid to charge in the beginning. I'm like, well, we can't charge for this, can we? That's crazy. And then the other thing is sticking to a regular cadence and a regular venue also really changes things. So we've done monthly pretty much straight through for over 5 years, which is really, you said you did that with the user groups, and it's it's not always easy. You're not always in the mood that month or whatever. Or the industry, sometimes there's ups and downs and things. But having that monthly cadence, that just really builds a strong backbone in the community. Everyone becomes friends. They really start to feel like family. We have people that still come that were at that very first meetup that are still regulars all the time, and that's really fantastic. And then the other one is we used to bounce around at different venues. For a long time, we were at Hacker Dojo when they were in Mountain View. And we did a bunch in the same venue straight through. And then we bounced around for a couple of years at different venues, different companies and stuff. And although it was great to have different scenery every time, sticking in that same venue really also helped strengthen the community. When we bounced around a lot, it became a lot more unpredictable, not just the turnout, but the quality of the event and just the vibe, the energy that's going on in the event. And then more recently, past couple of years, we've been having our own venues, and now we really have a lot more control over the tone of it. And also, you're a lot less beholden to sponsors and the people that host the space.
Totally.
A lot of people are very willing to host the space, but they want 20 minutes to give a really boring PowerPoint about something that no one cares about, and that totally can just kill the whole vibe of the meetup.
Yeah, we also divide and conquer. I think that's one of the best things about having like a co-president for me is that sharing that responsibility in the planning. So Mike and I will divvy up tasks, and now we've actually expanded our chapter leadership, and I think that that really helps. So we're starting to identify membership chair and sponsorship. Hopefully that will mean we'll get more sponsors, events manager. And that really helps, not only because it sort of takes some of the tasks off of our plates, but then I think that it evolves people's sort of sense of responsibility towards making it successful. And then, you know, it also just keeps them engaged. We have a lot of other ways that people are engaged in our community beyond just our events, but specifically, you know, you asked like, what can people do to be a better participant or a better attendee or things like that. And I think that it's, you know, it's okay to ask us, like, you know, what can I do? I'd like to be more involved, you know, because, you know, it's easy to sign a membership and then just sort of like have a logo on your website, but it's a lot harder to carve out time to make it something that's an actual, something you do intentionally to help. And then that grows the community, you know, because that's like a multiplier effect. And that's what I think is really important, is to have those other people who are also engaged, you know, so you're not just like party of one. You know?
It's just like doing VR or XR development. It's multidisciplinary, it takes a team, and that's a beautiful thing. You never know what kind of magic is going to happen from your local meetup, and it's really important to support your local meetup and be part of the community. I'll tell you one little story. We had the same 40 or 50 people come to every meetup, and then there were an additional 30, 40, depending on the topic. Like the biggest meetup, of course, was the one on teledildonics. But the other one that was amazing was we had regulars come, and there was a regular who was a financial analyst at Schwab who came to every meeting, was really, not in VR, but really interested in it, and just so friendly and outgoing and participatory, and people did become like a family. And I remember he stood up one day and he said, I have an announcement to make. And his name was Craig, and he said, I have this idea for a mailing list, so I'm going where we could have classified ads, and if we need help with the Verge group, or if you have any gear that you want to sell, or you need help moving, you could put an ad on my list for free. So I want to test it out here with Verge. So if you want to join Craig's list, please send me an email, and I'll get you on the list, and then every week we'll send out an update with everybody's little notices that they announce here. So Craig's list was born. It was before the web. It was all Craig Newmark's home computer mailing list and Verge, and so here we are, all these years later, and. I don't know when Craigslist is going to have a VR component, but it's kind of part of the legacy. So we'll do one question, but I want to encourage everybody here to join our meetups on meetup.com, because we also all attempt always to provide discounts and promotions and other ways to get involved in the larger community other than just attending our local events. Right? Any last words? Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah. No,
so, any questions, comments, observations, stories? Share. Yes, sir. I can't throw this at you. I'll repeat your question.
Sure. Okay. So, hi. My name is Michael, and this is my co-founder Matthew. We lead a VRARA student organization at the University of Michigan.
Right on.
Our question
welcome.
is, how do you effectively gather feedback from your members in order to drive like the decisions of like what you offer? Because we struggle a lot with that.
That's a great question. So this team here runs the Student VR Meetup at University of Michigan, and asked how we gather feedback from members in order to drive content development and organization of topics and speakers. Karl?
So it's not a very scalable solution, but I really try to talk to every person in person and have conversations at the events and try to talk to everyone there. I would say I'm not entirely 100% successful at that, but it's just super important to have that in-person conversation. of course, email and whatever. But I think, yeah, just talking to people individually, people are much more likely to offer constructive or valuable feedback on a one-on-one conversation than they are, in a group. Or if you ask questions, if you say, "Can we get some feedback?" and there's a big crowd, people feel a lot of pressure around that. And also, when we have multiple members of our team and multiple people talking to people, then you start to feel, some people feel more comfortable divulging, their complaint or their criticism to a different member of the team or someone of a different gender or something else. So having multiple members in the team talking to people is just, yeah, super helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And just to sort of tack on to that, we're also not super scientific in terms of the San Francisco chapter. I would like to be. I strive for that. Global probably has a lot more of like feedback and polls and data. But I'm just like Karl, and I think that one of the things I could give you as a tip is that if you have signups for the event, who's RSVP'd, just station yourself. Don't put like a student volunteer at the check-in. Like put yourself there and make sure that you shake the hand of every person that walks in and get to know their, make a connection with their face and their name, because you might be like, oh, you're, Susie, I've been meaning to talk to you. Thanks for emailing me 15 times, and I'm sorry I couldn't get back to you, or something like that, and then you make that connection. And also, people will know who you are because you're running around doing this event, but, you just don't have time. And so you have to make that, and make that effort in the beginning of the event, because like Karl said, like it'll just, it'll be at least that one-on-one connection, so people come up to you and feel like they know you. So
yeah, I've also used the email, the group aspect or feature of Meetup.com, because you can reach out if you are using that as a platform for promoting and organizing. There are a number of features that allow you to ask questions of members and receive email feedback. So we have a big night tonight for those of us joining us all at the Augie Awards. So we should probably wrap up here. And I'm really grateful for your participation
Thank you,
and
Linda.
being here on behalf of the Virtual World Society.